Chapter 101 to 106. Wheeze. A gust of wind blew past, rolling up the yellow sand into the sky. Standing alone on the ground, Kuroto glanced coldly at the incoming 8 sand ninjas. Without moving his gaze from their direction, Kuroto completed handprints for the Tenseigan chakra mode. Voila! Instantly, Kuroto's body was covered in the cyan blue chakra cloak. As soon as he entered the Tenseigan chakra mode, Kuroto's temperament changed completely. He appeared to be a god, looking indifferently at some mere mortals while hovering in the air. For him, these 8 ninjas were nothing more than some ants. Although unworthy, they will still have to make do with being his test subjects. While silently experiencing the consumptions of his chakra, Kuroto concentrated on condensing truth-seeking balls. First. Second. Third. After condensing the third one, Kuroto frowned slightly. He could feel that his body was feeling a little strained with the condensation of the third black orb. He feels that if he continues to bring out more truth-seeking balls, his chakra refining speed might not be able to keep up with the consumption speed. But why is that the case? Kuroto muttered with a thoughtful expression. In actuality, truth-seeking ball is the condensation of the 7 chakra natures. Therefore, theoretically, the basic requirement of condensing truth-seeking ball should be mastery of the changes of all 7 chakra natures. If that isn't done, then condensing truth-seeking ball is even beyond some dream. This is also the reason why only a handful of people were able to condense the truth-seeking ball, even in the original series. Excluding Kagaya, Hagoromo, Himura, and Otsutsuki Azura were the only 3 people capable of such feat for the next millennia, and after that too, only Obito and Madara, who became the Jubi's Jinchuriki, and Naruto because of the power given to him by Hagoromo, and finally Tonari, who awakened the Tenseigan Dojutsu, could use truth-seeking balls. Among all these people, only Kagaya and her 2 sons Hagoromo and Himura were the 3 capable of condensing the truth-seeking balls without relying on any external factors. As for Azura, Obito, Madara, Naruto, and Tonari, they all relied on some external source to have the qualitative improvement of their strength. Each of them needed to be in some special state where they borrowed chakra from some source to be able to use truth-seeking balls. When thinking of all this, Kuroto suddenly realized something. Only by strengthening his control over the 7 basic chakras natures will he be able to easily and more freely use truth-seeking balls, otherwise he can only condense them forcefully using the Tenseigan chakra mode, but that would put a burden on his body. And unlike the superb talent of Tonari, Kuroto is obviously quite mediocre, so his struggle will be much more than what Tonari went through. But this didn't worry him much. After all, the lack of talent can still be supplemented with hard work and science. Understanding his next course of actions, Kuroto finally directed his attentions towards the black orbs floating around him. In these upcoming tests that he would be conducting, Kuroto intends to see what his current upper limit is after becoming Ryumyaku's Jinchuriki. Therefore, even if burdensome, Kuroto still condensed more black orbs. 4th. 5th. 2 more black orbs condensed around him and floated by his side. After reaching the 5th, Kuroto felt that this is his current upper limit. If he condenses any more black orbs, he will be forced to exit the Tenseigan chakra mode due to being overwhelmed. But he was still very satisfied with the result. After all, previously without relying on the Ryumyaku's chakra, Kuroto couldn't even completely use 1 truth-seeking ball, and now he has access to 5 orbs. Such an improvement is not just considered at the level of rapid anymore. At this time, the 8 sand ninjas finally arrived in front of Kuroto. Judging from the chakra reaction he perceived, Kuroto judged that 2 of them are Jonin while the rest are Chunin. While Kuroto was observing the ants, sand ninjas were also analyzing the person. From just the fact that the person was floating and the heavy chakra pressure that was being emitted around him, their scalp felt numb. Chakra pressure aside, the ability to fly alone indicated that the enemy wasn't some ordinary shinobi. After all, the ninjas that are known to be capable of flight in the shinobi world are obviously beyond Jonin class. Whether at the Sandame Tsuchikage or the Kazekage with their magnet release, all are known to have Kage class strength. Therefore, all 8 of them were feeling kind of nervous. Although nervous, but ninjas are ninjas, for shinobi tasks are more important than their own as well as the team's life. So, gritting his teeth, one of the Jonin asked sternly, "Are you the person who stole the Ryumyaku?" Kuroto didn't bother to answer but slowly drifted towards the sand ninja who asked this question. The sand ninjas were obviously ignorant of what the Tenseigan chakra mode is and how horrifying the truth-seeking ball could be, but this didn't prevent them from feeling the instinctive fear of death like any creature does. To calm down the other ninjas around him, or probably to ease his own nervousness, the Jonin leader hastily shouted, "Do it!" Even before his words were finished, he completed the seal and roared in an aggressive tone. Ox, rat, ram, tiger, dog, tiger. Fire release, great tiger flame technique. At the same time, the 3 chunin of his team also cooperated with him tacitly and shouted in unison. Dog, horse, bird. Wind release, breakthrough. Boom. Fire style was complemented with wind style. The heat of the flame grew with the wind and the huge fire tiger dashed towards Kuroto at extreme speed while riding on the breakthrough winds. However, Kuroto wasn't impressed, he just raised his hands slightly. Instantly, one of the black orbs circling around his back appeared in front of him, and under his command, it morphed into a hemispherical shield to block the attack. Bang! Taking advantage of the wind, the flame tiger pounced on the black hemispherical surface and exploded upon impact. Seeing the attack connect with the person, the 3 chunin were immediately happy. It hit. Success. He should be dead. In their opinion, the flame tiger that was supplemented with the wind breakthrough from the 3 chunin, leading to a combined jutsu isn't something that even the Kages would dare resist, and here this person dares to face this jutsu openly? Obviously, he shouldn't survive this. Too bad they were in for a harsh awakening. Whoosh. The dust scattered due to the explosion was blown away because of the sharp wind that passed by. With the disappearance of the dust, the black hemispherical shield appeared in the vision of the sand ninjas. From the looks of it, there was neither a single crack nor any change in its shape. The powerful combined jutsu was like a simple firework for it. Seeing this scene, the chunin all gulped heavily. How come? Even the jonin were shocked. Although they all felt instinctive danger from those circling black orbs, no one expected that their attack couldn't even cause slight damage to it. Feeling that the situation might get worse, the second jonin hurriedly shouted, "Nobu, those black orbs are weird." The sand jonin named Nobu, who just used the fire-style jutsu, also suppressed the shock in his heart and shouted towards the other jonin while trying to restore his composure, "Yusuke, as expected this guy isn't easy, let's attack together." The jonin named Yusuke nodded and immediately bit his hand and pressed on the ground lightly, "Kuchios no jutsu." Puff. With a loud noise, the entire sand dune began to shake as the vague presence of a monster appeared in the sand. With his Tenseigan vision, Kuroto confirmed that there was a huge sandworm crawling in the sand dunes. The amazing thing to note is that not only the size of the sandworm is especially large, but it also has a high chakra, and among some of the ninja beasts Kuroto has personally seen, this sandworm would only be inferior to Orochimaru's summon snake, Manda. And such strength is no joke, after all, Manda is the boss summon of the snakes of the Ryuchi cave, therefore, obtaining such a summon beast is quite rare. Therefore, Kuroto was impressed, it's just that he was only impressed and nothing more. While curiously observing the sandworm, Kuroto decided to wait and see what will the enemy ninjas do. Obviously, these ninjas don't know that Kuroto has no plans to let them escape, all they will be useful is for Kuroto to measure himself, especially in using the truth-seeking ball, he still needs to get familiar with it. After all, starting from the point when Kuroto learned to use the Tenseigan chakra mode, he has had only a few opportunities to come into the contact with the truth-seeking ball, and most of the time, he was either in a desperate state or didn't have enough chakra at his disposal to be able to successfully familiarize himself with the use of truth-seeking ball. This is the first opportunity when he has both the necessary time and enough chakra, so Kuroto doesn't plan to let this opportunity go to waste, otherwise who knows when will the next chance come. So, while Kuroto was curiously observing the sandworm crawling beneath, Yusuke gave Nobu and other chunin ninjas a glance around and nodded in tacit understanding. In just a short eye contact, the 8 sand ninjas discussed their tactics. Wind release, twin tornado technique. All the chunin released the twin tornado techniques instantly, and at the same time, the giant sandworm hiding in the sand dunes spit out a giant sand pillar under Yusuke's command. The sand spiraled along the various small tornadoes circling around and covered the entire area in shoot and sand, causing a sandstorm effect. Seeing this, Kuroto shook his head in pity for them. So, they are trying to deprive me of my vision by the sandstorm? While Kuroto was analyzing the changes around him, Nobu took out 2 scrolls. Puff, puff. With a puff of smoke, 2 puppets appeared in front of him under the cover of the sandstorm. By appearance, one of the puppets looked like that of a snake, however, instead of a smooth body, it had several joints along its body. And from the looks of it, each of the sections was movable to some degree. It was quite strange, to say the least, but what else can you expect from a puppet? The other puppet appeared to be like a giant umbrella, with the diameter of the canopy being around 2 meters. At first glance Kuroto mistook it for a casobake. But that confusion was gone instantly. All this happened under Kuroto's observation. Glancing slightly, he perceived that the joints in the snake puppet were full of detonation charms while the belly of the umbrella-shaped puppet was filled with thousands of senbons, and there was no need to guess that these senbons would definitely be poisoned. After Nobu was ready with the two puppets, his voice echoed in the sandstorm, "Choose, whether you will surrender or die. I would be careful if I were you, underestimating us will only get you killed." And without waiting for any reply, he launched the attack. The first to move was the snake puppet. It crawled inside the sand under Yusuke's command. At the same time, a continuous barrage of poison senbons was fired at Kuroto. Seeing the incoming senbons, Kuroto indifferently waved his hands and used the two truth-seeking ball floating around him to block the barrage of poison senbons. Ding! 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 Countless senbons hit on the wall of the morphed black orbs with a metal crashing sound. But without any surprise, they all broke like a bamboo stick, and there was no change in the state of black orbs. While the senbons keep on coming at him, the snake that went inside the sand crawled out of it beneath the point that Kuroto was hovering over. Seeing the snake that was too difficult to notice for any ninja with a normal vision because of the sandstorm, Kuroto curled his lips condescendingly. If it were any other ninja, she might have suffered quite damage from that hidden attack because the detonation charms in its joints were already lit, and as soon as it appeared out of the sand it jumped to entangle Kuroto and caused a massive explosion. Boom! 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 The explosions were so violent that it even stopped the sandstorm, resulting in the huge shock waves that even forced all the ninjas to retreat at a distance and cover their faces to meet the impact. Boom! 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 The explosions continued for the next 1 minute. It's a pity that Kuroto is no longer ordinary. After everything became quiet, seeing that there seemed to be no movements and the scene was covered in the sand and dust, a Chunin asked nervously, "Do you think he is dead?" Gritting his teeth, Nobu shouted to reassure the others, "Don't worry, he has to be dead by now. In that explosion I used more than 10,000 detonation charms, nobody could survive something like that." However, before he could complete his sentence, Yusuke exclaimed, "No." "What now? What's wrong?" Nobu asked worriedly while the attention of all the Chunin ninja was focused on him. Shaking his head nervously, Yusuke muttered in horrifying expression, "He is still alive, his chakra reaction hasn't disappeared." "What? Are you sure? Nobody could survive." "I know what I am saying, the sandworm can clearly feel the enemy's chakra reaction." "Yusuke, how can this be? Who can survive such an explosion? Even Kazekage-sama wouldn't be able to escape unscathed in this situation." The Chunin ninjas muttered one after another. Even, Nobu frowned slightly and asked Yusuke tentatively, "Yusuke, could it be possible that the sandworm made a mistake?" Looking at the sky that was covered in smoke and dust, Yusuke's expression became more solemn, and he muttered in a serious breath, "I am afraid not. I can clearly feel that it is scared of the thing that is inside there." Nobu was stunned hearing Yusuke's words and murmured to himself in surprise, this disaster demon could also be scared of something. In the deserts of the Land of Wind, the giant sandworms have close to no natural enemies, all the birds, beasts, and humans are in its predatory range, and this specific giant sandworm was actually one of the king. For such an absurd existence to feel dread of something, Nobu felt that he was hearing something preposterous. However, without waiting for Nobu to calm down, the sand that covered all the area was blown away by the sharp winds that originated from the center of the explosion site. As the view got cleared, the enemy's completely unscathed figure appeared before their very eyes. Seeing that there was not even a wrinkle on the opponent's clothing, all sand ninjas looked at each other with just one thought in their mind, "He is a monster." All they could think of was that such a monster shouldn't even exist, how come they have to face him? Ignoring the horrifying looks that he was getting, Kuroto silently observed the changes in the truth-seeking balls, now again circling around him. As soon as the snake jumped out of the sand to coil around him, Kuroto wrapped himself inside a cocoon of morphed truth-seeking ball, so even in the face of explosions caused by the combustion of thousands of detonation charms, Kuroto wasn't any troubled, other than some chakra consumption. And indeed, as the Chunin muttered, if it were anyone below the strength of a Kage, they would be dead if anything in the face of such an explosion. But it's a pity that that's not the case here. After confirming his state, Kuroto glanced indifferently at the sand ninjas that were looking at him in a dumbfounded expression. "Is that the best you can do?" If this was all, then Kuroto was already bored. Even if he had the intentions of continuing the tests, he still can't continue with it as they are still in the territory of the Land of Wind, and the more movements he causes, the more enemy ninjas will be attracted here, which would be a hassle to deal with. Kuroto has to also maintain the caution that a ninja should have. Looking at the unscathed appearance of the masked person, Nobu wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. This monster is not something we can deal with, retreat. Following Nobu's order, all the sand ninjas immediately fled in separate directions. Curving his lips mockingly, Kuroto muttered, "Why are you all in such a hurry, don't you all want to dance?" And clawing his right hand in the void, Kuroto made a grip to attract something backward. All the 8 ninjas that fled in different directions were immediately back to their original positions. What the hell? Even if it was the experienced jonin like Nobu and Yusuke, they were left flabbergasted with the experience just now. However, not minding their panic, Kuroto spoke sarcastically, "Why the hurry, let us dance, shall we?" Then with a sudden 180-degree change of attitude he spoke with a cold voice, "Or maybe not." As soon as he spoke, Kuroto pointed his hand towards Nobu. With Kuroto's indication, one of the black orbs circling around his back shot out towards Nobu. Upon seeing one of those horrifying things shot towards him, Nobu's skin crawled with panic, and instinctively he took out a kunai to try to block that black orb. Bang! However, the black ball that was morphed into the shape of a sword directly cut through the kunai just like a hot knife slicing through butter, and without any resistance, it passed through Nobu's brain. Nobu! Seeing the companion being turned to dust in just one blow, Yusuke and the other sand ninjas were filled with grief and anger. But even more than the grief or anger, there was the feeling of dread. In the desperate state they were all trembling with fear and lost their will to fight. Everyone eyed the black orbs with horrifying expressions. No one could have imagined that these balls not only have the impeccable defense but also such an offense that the victim will instantaneously turn to dust. That's practically cheating. Beckoning back the orb that turned Nobu into dust, Kuroto remained calm all the while. Using a simple kunai to block truth-seeking balls is beyond idiotic, so he wasn't much surprised by the result, it was all too reasonable. But there was still a problem that Kuroto frowned upon. A mere sand jonin who was already in a panicked state could actually carry out the action of blocking by taking out a kunai in the mere moments it took for the black ball to strike him under Kuroto's command. Even if the defense didn't actually succeed, this still shows a problem. What that problem is? This shows that the speed of the attack wasn't fast enough. It is still too far from what Kuroto expects them to move. Truth-seeking balls are amazingly strong, but if the attack doesn't even hit the target, what good would they do? There is no shortage of fast people in the shinobi world, so unless his attack hits the target, otherwise it is all meaningless. It is still my lack of control. Kuroto feels that improving his control over the truth-seeking ball should be put on the agenda, as that is the best method through which he can advance to the combat class of Super Kage and beyond. While Kuroto was mulling over these thoughts, the only remaining sand jonin Yusuke shouted to the 6 chunin around him, "I'll make sure to hold him off and you guys will run in a separate direction. Remember, we must pass on the information about him back to the village." The 6 chunin have long lost any will to continue to fight. Additionally, they also know that waiting here means to be simply waiting for death, so without any need for a reminder, they all separated in different directions. Kuroto was also bored with the continuous entanglement, so while still in the Tenseigan chakra mode he flew high in the air and telekinetically directed the 5 truth-seeking balls towards the 5 fleeing chunin at the fastest speed possible. As soon as the black orbs came in contact with the 5 chunin, the ninjas one by one crumbled into dust, and after all the 5 were gone, all the 5 black orbs surrounded the last chunin, cutting off all his escape routes, and slowly divided his body into several parts that further turned into dust. Without even a moment to pass, all the 6 chunin were already dead. Seeing them all die so suddenly, Yusuke shouted hysterically, "You bastard, didn't I say that I will be fighting with you?" Kuroto glanced at Yusuke thoughtfully. Using all the chakra, Yusuke formed several hand seals. Bang! Accompanied by a muffled noise, a huge sand wave rushed out of dunes blocking Kuroto's path. Immediately afterward, the giant sandworm crawling under the sand dunes also raised half of its body, and with its mouth opened in Kuroto's directions showing the large teeth, it appeared as if it will swallow him whole. At this time Yusuke completed his seal printing and shouted in agitation, "Secret technique, sand and earth net binding." Followed by the shout, a very viscous type of clayey soil was sprayed from his mouth, and at the same time, another type of viscous liquid was sprayed out of the sandworm's mouth. The two types of spray collided and merged together in mid-air and turned into a giant net that covered hundreds of meters in the sky, accompanied by the wind. The net was directed towards Kuroto, who was hovering in mid-air as he observed everything carefully. Since Kuroto wasn't sure whether this slimy net was poisonous or corrosive, so using the black orbs he immediately blocked the section around him. While Kuroto defended against the attack, his attention was directed somewhere else as he curled his lips scornfully. In the Tenseigan vision, Kuroto perceived that taking the advantage of Kuroto's attention being diverted, the Jonin Yusuke immediately jumped into the belly of the sandworm, which dived directly into the sand and sneaked several meters below ground. There is no doubt that Yusuke planned to escape by hiding in the stomach of his summoned beast sandworm from the beginning. Even the order he gave to the Chunin ninjas of himself staying behind and letting them all escape was just a method to divert Kuroto's attention, but unfortunately for him the 6 Chunin died too fast that they couldn't even stall enough time for him to take any action. The bait was useless, as Kuroto was too fast, so Yusuke had no other choice but to rely on some secret technique to try and escape. But it's just that it was still all pointless. Pathetic. While muttering in disdain, Kuroto immediately got rid of whatever this secret technique was. And at the same time, he flew parallel to the sand and followed the sandworm from above the ground. The position of the giant sandworm was quite deep inside and its traveling speed was also rather fast. If it were any other ninja in Kuroto's stead then Yusuke would have definitely escaped, but it's a pity that he got unlucky. For Kuroto with the Tenseigan, tracking the giant sandworm and Yusuke was no big deal. Conforming their trajectory, Kuroto stretched out his right hand slightly in a gesture of holding a sword. Immediately all the black orbs floating at his back merged together at his palm, to which Kuroto focused a tremendous amount of his chakra and muttered in a cold and indifferent tone, "Golden Will Reincarnation Explosion." Instantly, out of the spiraling large black orb, a giant long sword of several hundred meters, made of pure chakra that looked as dazzling as the sun itself appeared in Kuroto's hand. Phew. Now that's what I call amazing, muttered Kuroto in the awe of his own power. Even if he knew of it, even if he expected it, but when the real thing was in his hands, Kuroto can't help but wonder at the power the sword holds in it. With this sword in his hands, Kuroto felt omnipotent. He felt that he could split apart continents. In a sense, he now understands why the world was too small for Madara and Hashirama to play around with. Faintly glancing at the sand dune below to reconfirm the sandworm's position, Kuroto swung the golden sword that was hundreds of meters long without any hesitation. Voila! It felt as if space itself would be divided by its power. There was a deep divide in the entire land, up to several kilometers. From the divide, a huge amount of blood was sprayed out. Kuroto glanced below only to find that the giant sandworm that was hidden more than 100 meters deep had been cut in half along the vertical axis, i.e., from head to tail, by the swipe of the golden sword. And the blood and fluids that flowed out of its body continued filling the divide. No matter how powerful the summoned beast was, it couldn't resist even a single slash of the golden sword. This just goes to show how powerful this attack was. After all, Tonari was able to cut the moon in half with this technique. What is just a mere giant king sandworm? Just as Kuroto was about to deactivate the golden sword, he suddenly discovered that the chakra reaction under the sand dunes hadn't completely disappeared yet. With a quick confirmation, he found that the sand jonin that was hiding in the belly of the giant sandworm was lucky enough to escape the range of attack of the Golden Will Reincarnation Explosion. Is this irony? Kuroto murmured with a helpless expression. Sure enough, even if you become a god, one can never be too careful in this forsaken shinobi world. A sand four-man squad that was rushing towards the next checkpoint assigned to them for finding any traces of the missing Rorin survivors stopped suddenly. The captain of the squad quickly questioned the last man at the back. "Hey, Akira. What happened? Why did you stop all of a sudden? Did you find anything?" The sand ninja named Akira who stopped all of a sudden pointed at the horizon on the left side in a daze. "Captain, look there. How come there is that golden light shining?" Hearing Akira's words, not only the captain but the rest of the members of the squad also turned to look at the left horizon only to find that it was shining brightly with a dazzling golden light. The brilliance wasn't any inferior to that of the sun itself. Golden glow. Could it be the sun? Don't be idiotic, fat chump. The sun is shining above. How could it be sun? Then is it a mirage? Could it really be some sort of mirage? Thought the captain while observing the distant sky with a frowning expression. And a similar scene was taking place around the other checkpoints where Kuroto's fight took place. Many four-man squads that were rushing to find the traces of Rorin survivors along the border connecting the land of wind and the land of rain all stopped and looked at the brilliant golden light shining in the sky. After some deliberation, the captain of the squad who was a jonin asked the ninja next to him thoughtfully, "Check the map, see which squads are responsible for that direction?" The ninja nodded and immediately answered after checking the map. According to the details, Squad 78 and Squad 91 are responsible for that direction. Squad 78 and Squad 91. If I didn't guess wrong, Nobu and Yusuke should be the Jonin captain of these two squads. Muttered the captain while tapping his chin with a thoughtful expression. As soon as the rest of the ninjas heard the captain's words, everyone's expression sank as the captain muttered with a gloomy look, neither Nobu nor Yusuke can make such big movements in the battle, for something to have caused such a scene that its traces are visible all the way here means that something isn't right. But Captain, are you really sure that the golden light might be coming because of some battle? Asked a ninja in worry. Although I am not sure, this is still the most logical explanation. Akira, check if you can sense any chakra signature being emitted from that direction. Ordered the captain in a hurry. Nodding at the captain's words, Akira crouched down and placed his hand on the sand as he concentrated on sensing the chakra fluctuations from the direction where the golden light was being emitted. Not long after, Akira opened his eyes in a horrifying expression, and seeing his expression, the captain understood that he is right. To confirm his guess, Akira muttered, "This is the first time I have sensed such dense chakra. There is definitely someone there and she is very strong, but because of too heavy chakra pressure, I can't determine anything else." The Jonin captain nodded, he already expected as much. The Sand Village has already mobilized a majority of its forces to not only chase down the Rorin survivors but also to find the person responsible for stealing the Ryumyaku and also to search for traces of the person named Oni, responsible for disrupting their entire search operation in the starting. There is still no confirmation whether the same person is responsible for all these things or maybe more than one person or an entire organization, so without taking any chances Yondaime Kazekage mobilized most of the ninjas of the Sand Village. After all, the Ryumyaku was personally sealed by the Yondaime Hokage of Konoha. Someone was not only able to successfully break through the seals, that their entire village couldn't accomplish in so many years, but also stole it overnight. This alone shows that the person they are dealing with is not some ordinary ninja. If Sand Village can catch them, then not only can they obtain the Ryumyaku but also torture out the much-needed knowledge of Fuinjutsu from him. This is the reason why all the ninjas were ordered to be extremely serious for this mission. Therefore, the spectacle in the distance made the Sand Ninja all over the border realize that something is happening in that direction, and this also worried them for the safety of the two squads that were responsible for searching there. Everyone more or less guessed that ordinary ninjas can't make such a scene, so the only possibility is that the person who stole the Ryumyaku is in that direction. Realizing this, the Sand Shinobi squads did not dare to delay any longer and immediately rushed to the place where they might find the person responsible for stealing the Ryumyaku. On Kuroto's side. Damn it, the chakra consumption of the Golden Will reincarnation explosion is too high. Just now, a single slash from the golden sword exhausted most of the Ryumyaku chakra that Kuroto has refined, so at this time he was a little reluctant to maintain the Tenseigan chakra mode. But Kuroto can't afford to deactivate the Tenseigan chakra mode currently, at least not until he kills Yusuke, because no other attack could reach down to hundreds of meters below the ground, therefore Golden Will reincarnation explosion is his best bet. After all, at that depth, no simple attack would eliminate the guy. Gritting his teeth, Kuroto directly used the Ryumyaku chakra without refining and forcibly urged the golden sword to accurately slash the target using the weak chakra he had at this time. Anyone who has witnessed his Tenseigan chakra mode must be eliminated, otherwise, the intelligence of his abilities will be revealed. Kuroto doesn't want his existence to be known yet, so eliminating any and all witnesses is necessary and will save him from the unwanted hassle. Voila! The golden sword again cut the deserts into a deep divide, easily slashing hundreds of meters this time, and at the same time completely eliminating any signs of life in its path. Wheeze. After confirming that the Sand Jonin Yusuke was dead, Kuroto sighed lightly. But before he could relax, the golden sword in his hands automatically collapsed. Not just that, starting from his fingers, the Tenseigan chakra cloak started fading away, following which his fingers started turning gray bit by bit. This. In shock, Kuroto hurriedly landed on the ground and used the remaining of the Tenseigan chakra to resist the petrification effect that began to spread from the tip of his fingers. However, because he has already used most of the Tenseigan chakra that he had refined previously in using the truth-seeking balls and finally in the Golden Will reincarnation explosion, therefore the Tenseigan chakra in his body wasn't enough to resist the petrification. As a result, the petrification gradually started to spread from the tip of his fingers up to his wrist and down to the elbow. It's the corrosion from the invasion of natural energy. Kuroto was suddenly panicked because of the situation. If someone hasn't mastered the senjutsu, then the person will be gradually returning closer to nature by the invasion of the natural energy, so the petrification effect that is slowly spreading along his right hand will eventually turn him into a stone. The reason why Kuroto's body is petrifying is that the natural energy present in Ryumyaku's chakra has invaded inside him. If he refines the Ryumyaku's chakra into the Tenseigan chakra before using it, then there's no problem, but because he didn't have any option left at the last second, Kuroto had to directly use the Ryumyaku chakra for the second slash of the golden sword, so this is the result. Initially, he thought that just using it once shouldn't be that much harmful, but because the chakra consumption of Golden Will reincarnation explosion is too high, so he unconsciously allowed the invasion of a large amount of natural energy inside him, and since Kuroto is a complete stranger to senjutsu, therefore, his body is being petrified. Even after trying to resist the corrosion of natural energy, the petrifying effect didn't stop and continued to spread up to the shoulder. Seeing that the situation was getting worse by the second, and if the petrification spread to his internal organs then everything will be over, so gritting his teeth Kuroto used the secret technique of physical regeneration to extract more Tenseigan chakra from the new cells in his body to resist the natural energy's invasion. It will cost him his lifespan, but Kuroto can't care about it for now. As soon as the chakra from the newly divided cells was extracted, the cyan flames of the Tenseigan chakra cloak again lit and resisted the petrification effect. Slowly but surely, the grayish hands started to turn normal, and finally, after a few minutes passed, his hand returned to normal once again. After a while, the natural energy inside his body was also cleared off. Phew. Breathing a sigh of relief, Kuroto thought to himself, fortunately it happened now. Otherwise, if the invasion of natural energy were to take place during a battle, then I would have been done for. While being attacked by the natural energy, let alone fighting, even defending or escaping would become impossible while resisting the corrosion of the natural energy, so experiencing this now although scared him, he was still glad that he did. After all, it's a blessing in disguise. With this prior knowledge, Kuroto can try to see if he can find any countermeasure or simply try to learn senjutsu. With that decided, Kuroto glanced at the battlefield one last time to confirm that everyone was dead and he didn't leave any traces of his identity, and after putting away all his thoughts he quickly disappeared with a body flicker. With his right eye closed, the face of Yondaime Kazekage was as dry as the surrounding desert while he observed the surroundings with a gloomy look. Elder Chiyo, who was pacing back and forth behind him, came over and asked, "Are there any clues?" Kazekage Raza shook his head negatively. Just now Raza was scanning the surroundings using the third eye of gold sand. Even after searching around several miles, he found no useful clues. Listening Kazekage-sama's response, Chiyo sighed lightly. She wasn't much surprised by it, as this wasn't beyond her expectation, because the desert is like this. Over time, the wind and the surrounding sand naturally cover everything in the desert. So, even if the mysterious person did leave any traces, it would be almost impossible to find them as they would have gradually been covered in the sand. After deactivating the eye of golden sand, Raza walked to the edge of the solid divide and looked at its depth with a frowning expression. The kilometers-long thin divide is still the same as it was when Kuroto created it using the Golden Will reincarnation explosion. Only because of the deposit of the blood and other colloidal body fluids, the edges were solidified, and the fact that the divide stretched for several kilometers, it was still very clearly visible. Crouching at the edge of the divide, Kazekage lightly pressed his hand on the solidified surface and transferred chakra into it. While charging chakra into the nearby sand, he closed his eyes and sensed the situation at the depth. The sandworm below is dead, and there are no other traces of any life left. Ebizo, another elder of the sand village, wrinkled his face upon hearing this. Even if the king sandworm was cut in half, it shouldn't have died, right? Sandworms by nature are the type of beasts with high self-healing ability. So, even if the body was cut in half, as long as the vital organs are fine, it should have survived. What's more, the sandworms when hidden inside the desert sand are nearly invincible, so even with his rich experience, Ebizo finds it hard to believe that a giant king sandworm that was hidden hundreds of meters underground actually died, and what's more difficult to imagine is just how strong would have been the attack to cause such a creature's death. Chiyo also asked Raza with some doubt, "If I didn't guess wrong, only you are capable of doing such a thing in the village, right?" After groaning a little, Kazekage shook his head. "This sandworm died at a depth of several hundred meters. Sure, I can trap it at such a depth, but killing it would be difficult even for me, not to mention this one died with a single attack." The honored siblings were left speechless upon hearing Kazekage's reasoning. In just a few words, they have already understood just what degree of strength does this mysterious person has. After a long silence between the three, Ebizo asked with a thinking expression, "Who could it be?" In the eyes of the three, the mysterious person who stole the Ryumyaku definitely has strength higher than the Kage level, so such a person shouldn't be unknown in the shinobi world. Chiyo was still insistent on her judgment. Only Konoha is capable of unlocking the seal used by Yellow Flash, so it has to be a Konoha shinobi. While the three were discussing, a Sandumbu ninja arrived in front of the three and reported, "Kazekage-sama, Elder Chio, Elder Ebizo, we have followed the tracks left by them all the way and found that the survivors of Rorin have crossed the border and entered into the territory of the Land of Rain. Raza's eyes sharpened as soon as he heard Umbun Ninja's report and muttered to himself, could it be the demigod, Hanzo's handiwork? Although it's hard to believe, the matter would still get troublesome if it was him. Ebizo said with a frown. Under Pain's closed policy, all the external transmission of the Land of Rain was cut off, therefore, all the villages still believe that the demigod Hanzo of the Salamander is still the leader of the Rain Village. Even in the original story, the news of Hanzo's death was always covered by the Akatsuki, and it wasn't until Jiraiya personally sneaked into the Rain Village that he found a piece of shocking news that the demigod had long been dead at Pain's hands. Kazekage-sama, do we have to sneak into the territory of the Land of Rain to hunt down the Rorin survivors? Asked the Sand Umbun Ninja respectfully. Kazekage shook his head after a little thinking. Even if Kazekage Raza is the leader of one of the 5 great shinobi village, he wouldn't dare to underestimate the man known as the demigod, so taking any action that might offend Hanzo of the Salamander without any solid proof is not possible. After groaning a little while, Yondaime Kazekage said to the 2 advisors around him, inform Konoha's Hokage of the fact that the Ryumyaku was stolen and see their reaction to this new. Both Chio and Ebizo nodded at the same time. What can Sand Village do without having solid proof of who the actual culprit is? Nothing. All they can do for now is to inquire from other villages and judge the identity of the culprit from their reactions. On Kuroto's side. While sitting cross-legged at the back of the Sandaime Kazekage puppet, he hurried towards the village while summing up the whole experience from the previous battle. Truth-seeking balls have very strong defensive power, but as always the chakra consumption is too high. Although I have Ryumyaku at my disposal, it still doesn't give me an excuse to waste chakra needlessly, so it wouldn't be wise to solely rely on black orbs for defensive purpose. Moreover, the attack speed of the black orbs is also not optimal, at least for now, it isn't. Using black balls for a sneak attack is fine, but for frontal combat, it is still not the best choice, as the enemy can avoid it if she is fast enough. Not to mention, there is only a 70-meter range up to which the black orbs are controllable. So, although extremely deadly, black orbs are still not the most efficient. It is also hard for me to maintain 5 black balls for now, so 3 would just be fine. Anyway, there are already techniques like Golden Will Reincarnation Explosion and Silver Will Reincarnation Explosion with excess power. There is hardly anyone in the current shinobi world who can survive in the face of such attacks. So consuming too much chakra only to increase the intensity and degree of attack damage is not necessary for now. While summarizing these short details, Kuroto glanced at his right hand again. Undoubtedly his mentality was a little affected after becoming Ryumyaku's Jinchuriki. Lack of chakra has always been his major limitation. Lack of chakra is what has always held him back. After becoming the Ryumyaku's Jinchuriki, Kuroto got a little emotional by the sudden gain of power, and didn't pay enough attention to the enemy, and made some mistakes. Even a moment of carelessness will get you killed in the shinobi world. Kuroto warned himself silently. There are countless examples of such people that Kuroto knows. Orochimaru was defeated twice by Itachi, even Madara, and Obito with Jubi's power suffered a similar fate, not to mention even Kagaya also suffered at the hands of Naruto's reverse harem jutsu. This teaches Kuroto that, no matter how strong a person becomes, she will face the same ending as these people if she becomes careless. It's just Kuroto's luck that the mistake this time gave him some deeper insight into the chakra nature of Ryumyaku. So, this incident could actually become an intermediary for him to develop an understanding of natural energy through Ryumyaku. Although senjutsu users are rare, it is still not too unknown. As long as someone can use the natural energy present in nature without any negative effects upon them, they can more or less be classified as senjutsu users. And as known, there are various methods of learning senjutsu, including the Toad Practitioner method of Mount Myaboku, the Snake Practitioner method of Ryuchi Cave, and the Slug Practitioner method of the Shikatsu Forest. Even the people of Yugo's clan can have direct contact with natural energy, although it affects their psychology, it is true nonetheless. And the cursed seals developed by Orochimaru using the enzyme he collected from Yugo, is actually a method to attain senjutsu, even if only by a percentage, it is senjutsu nonetheless. Regardless of the variety of methods to learn senjutsu, there is a common requirement of a medium. For practicing Mount Myaboku's Toad Sage mode, you need the toad oil to sense the natural energy. Naruto was able to sense and absorb the natural energy present in the atmosphere with the help of the unique toad oil. Kuroto has access to Ryumyaku, and since the Ryumayaku's chakra contains a very high amount of natural energy, and coupled with his Tenseigan's perception, Kuroto can sense this natural energy, so direct absorption of Ryumyaku's chakra is akin to using Mount Myaboku's unique toad oil for him. Tapping his chin, Kuroto continued to ponder. Learning Mount Myaboku's Sage Mode will make the user have the obvious characteristics of a toad, and similarly using Ryuchi Cave's Sage Mode will make the user have obvious snake characteristics. These 2 points obviously illustrate a problem, and that is their suitability. These senjutsu methods are devised for their own species and not actually for humans. Although humans can learn and practice them, it doesn't mean that they were devised for humans. Konoha Village, Uchiha Clan. Uchiha Shinichi knelt outside the patriarch's mansion with a solemn face. The death of Uchiha Kurumi has changed him into a cold and silent person, but he still didn't give up hope, because Shinichi firmly believes that the glorious Uchiha clan would definitely not let the damn murderer go away. Uchiha Shinichi firmly believes that the people of the Uchiha clan will never die in vain. Shinichi looked at the closed door in front of him with a hint of expectations in his eyes. Currently, a meeting of the elite shinobi of the Uchiha clan is being held past that door. The elites are discussing how to resolve Uchiha Kurumi's murder at the hands of the root shinobi. While waiting for the meeting to complete, Shinichi frowned at the strangeness of his Sharingan. Shinichi has noticed that his Sharingan has been acting strangely ever since Kurumi's death. Sometimes it is a little uncontrollable, and his insight has also increased significantly in the past few days. If such a thing happened in the past, Shinichi would have definitely been very happy, and even arrogantly show it off to the other Uchiha, but with Kurumi's death, even if his pupil power increased, he has no mood to focus on such meaningless things. Inside Patriarch's mansion, Shisui was sitting at a corner with a tired expression. This exhaustion was by no means caused due to maintaining a shadow clone to cover for Kuroto's absence for the past few days. All he feels is mental exhaustion and worry because the situation between the Uchiha clan and Hokage faction is at a more acute point. If something isn't done, then no doubt, the two sides will fall apart. And Shisui was able to sense the involvement of the third party in this scenario of Kurumi's death. Firstly, Shisui also agrees with Kuroto-san's judgment that the advisory council wouldn't want to test Uchiha clan's patience before the village successfully signs the peace treaty with the Cloud Village. Another reason being that Danzo-sama had no reason to issue an order to kill Uchiha Kurumi. Kurumi's Sharingan was also at 2 Tomo state, so Danzo-sama wouldn't have done it for the Sharingan. And even if, by some chances he did give such an order, then with the style of how Root Umbu operates, they would definitely go for a group attack, a quick ambush, and assassination. It is impossible to let Shinichi discover the incident and then flee in panic. No matter how I think about it, it most certainly is a trap, thought Shisui. Kuroto-san did mention that there might be Uchiha descendant outside the village planning to harm the Uchiha clan and Konoha. Although Shisui understood that it could be possible, he still felt a little absurd about it, but upon rethinking and with how the pieces of the puzzle involving the Kyuubi's rebellion, and now Uchiha Kurumi's death are being connected one by one leading to an unfavorable situation of the Uchiha clan, Shisui has started to believe that might just be the case. Even he has felt that there is some third party, hiding behind the scenes and secretly controlling everything for the Uchiha's doom. Danzo's Root Umbu dared to do such a thing, and now Danzo refuses to hand over the murderer. This is a provocation to the Uchiha clan, Fugoku-sama. Yes, if we spare them, then next time he'll again do something like this. Moreover, other clans will also believe that the Uchiha clan is a coward that bowed before that piece of trash. We can't let go of this matter. All the Uchiha ninjas in the meeting room were agitated at Danzo's dirty means. The patriarch of the Uchiha clan also had a serious face as ever. Silence. With Fugaku's order, everyone quieted down. After pondering a little, Fugaku glanced in Shisui's direction and asked, "What was Sandan's response?" Bowing his head, Shisui replied with a helpless expression, "Please forgive me, clan head, but my request for a meeting was denied." Since the Umbu Team 11 was temporarily suspended, so Shisui lost his right to directly meet Hokage-sama. Therefore, if he wants to meet Hokage, he needs to request a meeting appointment similar to all the other ninjas. However, this time Shisui's request was straightforwardly rejected by Sandan. Hearing Shisui's reply, Fugaku's expression darkened. Even Uchiha Fugaku can judge that something is amiss in this situation, but whether this matter is really related to Danzo or not, the Konoha Council's distrust towards the Uchiha clan is clearly displayed here. If this continues, the Uchiha and Hokage faction will eventually reach a point when there would be no option left other than the rebellion. Unlike the other people of the Uchiha clan, Uchiha Fugaku is clearer about the situation of the village. Although Sandame's strength has begun to decline due to old age, he is still one of the strongest shinobi of Konoha village with a Kage-class strength. Even Uchiha Fugaku himself with the Manjikyu is not sure to win one-sided against Sandame. Coupled with the presence of the other 3 members of the Advisor Council, the Sannin Jiraiya, as well as other Umbu and Root elites, it is nearly impossible for the Uchiha clan to successfully overthrow the Hokage faction. More importantly, the intentions of the other clans of Konoha are also ambiguous. If the Uchiha clan is in a dilemma, they might just support the Uchiha, but if the Uchiha were to initiate a coup d'etat, Fugaku can be more than sure that they will never support the Uchiha clan. And just to make the matters worse, most of the clans might even side with the Hokage faction without any hesitation. Therefore, Fugaku is also not sure what to do. Looking at the agitated faces of the people, Fugaku sighed helplessly. Fugaku doesn't want to restore the glory of the Uchiha clan and become the Hokage at the cost of his people's lives. As someone who has awakened the Manjikyu, he knows full well what is the pain of losing your loved ones. Although Fugaku doesn't express this, he is really worried about Uchiha's situation. If such a situation continued, the whole Uchiha clan will be destroyed. Konoha Village, Hokage Office. While a meeting was being held in the Uchiha clan to discuss what to do about Uchiha Kurumi's murder, another meeting was being held at the Hokage office with the presence of Sandame and the 3 council advisors. Tuck. 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 Seeing the looks he was getting, Danzo tapped the cane on the ground in annoyance and said grumpily, "I said it already, this matter wasn't under my instructions." Hearing Danzo's answer, Utatane Koharu questioned with a cold expression, "Then how come a ninja of your root killed the girl of the Uchiha clan?" After a slight hesitation, Danzo told the other 3 in the office about the exact situation reported to him by the root ninja and added angrily, "I suspect that this incident was enacted by the Uchiha clan." Listening to Danzo's explanation and his analysis, Hamura asked solemnly, "Do you have any evidence to prove your words?" "I don't have any and I don't care. I have already said that this must be their enactment to threaten us." With an angry roar, Danzo continued, "I say that the Uchiha are just trying to threaten us by causing unrest while the village is negotiating with the Cloud Village." Shimura Danzo has always been the person to play his cards while hiding behind the scenes and use others as his scapegoat. This time, he was inexplicably blamed for the death of an Uchiha brat, so this made him extremely annoyed. Although he vaguely realized that there might be some hidden forces manipulating strings from the shadows, now Danzo can only point his finger towards the Uchiha. As for who the person hidden in the shadows is, that is another matter altogether, and he swears to find the person who dared to be more shameless than him. Danzo's words made Sandame a little upset. The peace talks with the Cloud Village have been going unsuccessfully. It has already been several months since the conflict subsided, but the differences between the representatives of both parties have made the negotiations quite unproductive. As the attacked party, Sandame's approval of the peace agreement has already put him in a tough spot. If he were to make concessions based on the terms stated by the Raikage Kid, it would be difficult to suppress the criticism he would receive even with his prestige as the longest reigning Hokage, especially when you have Shimura Danzo as your second in command. However, Cloud Village's attitude has been very tough and they have been continuously refusing to compensate the Konoha village for the losses, and this has made Sandame more annoyed. Putting down his tobacco pipe on the ashtray at the side, Sandame stated firmly, "This matter you have reported just now, leaving out your personal analysis, must be clearly explained to the Uchiha clan, no questions asked. I do not want any chaos in the village during the peace talks, is that clear?" Listening to Hokage's order, Danzo asked coldly, "What explanation should I give them?" Sandame also knew that forcing Danzo too much is also counterproductive, so said with a calm voice, "Let your root ninja go and explain the whole situation to Uchiha Fugaku personally. I believe that Fugaku is both wise and calm enough to not take any stupid action. I will arrange it." Narrowing his eyes, Danzo nodded while gritting his teeth with a frustrated expression at the fact that he'll have to bow to the despicable Uchiha clan. If only he was the Hokage instead of Hiruzen. This time Shimura Danzo lost half of the battle. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.